He remained unaware of the boy's name, knowing only the desperate cries for help. His subsequent actions brought the world to a standstill. If you've ever questioned whether a single act of bravery can redefine your life, this narrative is for you. May your days be filled with peace, your troubles dissolve, and your deepest aspirations draw nearer. Before we delve in, kindly share your location. You are more than just subscribers. You are our family. It was one of those nights where the heavens seemed undecided between a storm of tears. Rain lashed horizontally against the weathered, rusted rooftops of South Glen, a neighborhood permeated by the scent of old motor oil and shattered promises. Ethan Miller, a devoted single father, his hands perpetually stained with grease and his backpack burdened with overdue bills, was escorting his daughter Lily home from her evening shift at the diner. Their discussion, centered on math homework, was abruptly halted when Ethan froze. A scream, piercing and raw, cut through the very air. Flames danced along the sides of a dilapidated trailer across the street. The windows glowed an angry orange, and smoke billowed from the roof like menacing fingers. Acting purely on instinct, Ethan pushed Lily behind him and sprinted across the muddy road. The rain intensified, yet it couldn't quench the inferno raging within. He kicked the locked door. No time for keys. Grabbing a tire iron from a derelict truck bed, he shattered the nearest window, sustaining a gash on his forearm in the process, and pulled himself inside. Within, he was met with a choking, chaotic inferno. Dropping to his hands and knees, he crawled forward, calling out into the suffocating smoke. Then a faint cough, a child's cough. He turned toward the sound, his heart pounding, until his hand located something small and trembling. A boy, perhaps 5 or 6 years old, huddled in the corner, a bandana tied around his wrist. "I've got you, little guy. Hang in there." Ethan gasped, enveloping the child in his worn flannel shirt. The roof above groaned ominously, and then darkness claimed him. Upon regaining consciousness, Ethan's vision was clouded by a uniform gray. For a fleeting moment, he believed he had passed, until a searing pain shot through his ribs. He coughed, and suddenly a voice exclaimed, "He's breathing! He's alive!" Paramedics hurried to the edge of the wreckage, carefully extracting Ethan as he clutched the boy tightly. The child had lost consciousness. Streaks of soot marked his face like tribal pain as they loaded both into the ambulance. Lily rushed towards her father, tears streaming down her face. "Dad! Oh my gosh! Dad!" But before Ethan could respond, the thunderous rumble of engines echoed down the street. Not the wail of sirens, but the unmistakable sound of Harleys. First one, then 5, then a dozen more. Black leather, beards, tattoos, an arrival that instantly heightened the tension. The EMTs paused. A firefighter muttered, "Oh, hell!" The lead biker dismounted, discarded his helmet, and raced toward the ambulance. His vest bore the insignia AFA, Hell's Angels, MC. But it was the sight of him dropping to his knees beside the boy that commanded everyone's attention. "He's my son," the biker choked out, his voice thick with emotion. The paramedics hesitated. "His name is Leo. Please, just tell me he's okay," the biker pleaded, his voice cracking. Ethan looked up from the stretcher, his eyes hazy. "He's breathing, but get him some oxygen, fast." The biker's gaze met Ethan's. There, amidst the ash and torn fabric, their eyes locked. In that profound moment, the atmosphere shifted. No words of thanks were exchanged. Not yet. Only a silent, powerful understanding forged in the heart of the blaze. 2 days later, Ethan lay in his hospital bed, bruised and bandaged, struggling to open a peanut butter sandwich with one hand. His phone buzzed incessantly with calls from reporters. A news van was parked outside the emergency room. Someone had posted a grainy video of the rescue online. The media hailed him as the hero of South Glen, but Ethan felt anything but heroic. Heroes didn't risk losing their jobs by missing shifts. Heroes didn't have bills piling so high they could barricade themselves against the cold. Lily brought him a coffee and sat beside him, leaning her head against his good shoulder. "You saved that boy, Dad. What anyone else says doesn't matter." He managed a weary smile. "I didn't even think. I just reacted." Just then, the door creaked open. The same biker from the fire entered, accompanied by 2 others. His leather vest still read AFA, but his eyes held a different weight today. Removing his sunglasses, he stepped closer. "My name is Blade," he said, extending a hand. "Leo, my son. The doctors believe he'll recover thanks to you." Ethan clasped Blade's hand, feeling the firm, unspoken acknowledgement within the grip. Before Ethan could reply, Blade produced an item wrapped in cloth. It wasn't money, it was a simple silver pin. "Ethan, though we've just met, you need to know this," Blade stated softly. "When one of ours is saved, we stand with that person. They're never alone again." Ethan blinked, seeking clarification. I don't quite understand." "You will," Blade assured him, before turning and departing. Lily whispered, "What did he mean?" Ethan gazed at the pin, a symbol of an angel's wing, in the initials AFA. Ethan didn't encounter them again for several weeks. Life resumed a semblance of normalcy, or as normal as it could be after becoming a viral sensation across multiple news channels. Returning to his part-time job at the garage, he was informed he was now considered too much of a liability due to his newfound fame and the resulting distractions. He subsequently found employment cleaning buses during the night. It was a quiet, solitary job, fitting for someone trying to keep their thoughts at bay. Then, one evening, after dropping Lily off at school, he discovered a package waiting on his porch. There was no accompanying note, only a worn but clean leather vest. A small patch on the back bore the word "Prospect." Tucked inside the vest pocket was a photograph of Leo, grinning with a thumbs up and a handwritten caption, "He still asks about you." Ethan remained seated on the porch steps for a considerable time, his gaze fixed on the vest. Was this a prank, a gesture of gratitude, or something more profound? The following morning, the distinctive rumble of a Harley announced Blade's arrival. He approached alone this time. "We don't bestow those lightly," Blade remarked. Ethan crossed his arms. "I'm not a biker." "That's precisely why we're here," Blade countered. "AFA isn't merely about motorcycles and riding. It embodies honor, loyalty, and the profound obligation to repay immeasurable debts." Ethan expressed his hesitation. "I'm not seeking any reward," Blade acknowledged with a nod. "Excellent. We're not offering one." He then added quietly, "However, we have a place for you at our table." Ethan glanced down at the vest once more. A dormant feeling stirred deep within his chest, something that hadn't been awakened in years. 3 weeks later, Ethan stood within a warehouse pungent with the aromas of gasoline, leather, and stale coffee. Around a makeshift table, constructed from discarded car doors, sat a dozen men, some with eye patches, others bearing faces etched with life's experiences and tattoos that spoke volumes. They referred to their gatherings as church, though it lacked the traditional pews and robes, substituting them with unwavering loyalty and a reverent silence. Blade gestured for Ethan to step forward. The room hushed. Leo was also present, clutching a miniature biker vest, his face beaming with childlike joy. Ethan cleared his throat. "I'm not entirely sure why I'm here." An elder biker, his beard a cascade of white, spoke. "You're here because when the critical moment arrived, you didn't hesitate. You willingly endured pain to rescue a child you didn't know. That signifies everything. That is brotherhood." Blade placed a hand reassuringly on Ethan's shoulder. "You are not obligated to ride. You need not wear this vest. But understand this. Should you ever require our assistance, we will be there. Not for personal gain, not for recognition, but simply because you are now one of us." Ethan surveyed the men around him, and for the first time in years, the crushing weight of solitude lifted. He felt chosen. Ethan did not own a motorcycle. The closest he had ever come to a Harley was performing an oil change on one at a friend's shop years ago. So when Blade appeared the following morning with a second motorcycle, a matte black beauty with a low seat and a powerful engine, Ethan could only stare in disbelief. "This can't be mine," he stated, still holding his lunchbox, dressed for his custodial duties. "It is now," Blade confirmed, tossing him a set of keys attached to a silver angel wing charm. Ethan looked down at the keys, uncertain whether to laugh, cry, or flee. "I don't even know how to ride." "We'll teach you," Blade assured him. "Brotherhood isn't about being flawless. It's about commitment." Lily emerged from the house, her backpack slung casually over one shoulder. Her eyes widened at the sight of the motorcycle, then fixed on her father. "Are you riding with them now?" she inquired, her tone more curious than apprehensive. Ethan paused. "I'm not sure what I'm doing, but perhaps it's time I embraced a new skill." That weekend, they transported him to an abandoned airstrip on the outskirts of town. The other bikers formed a line, observing in quiet anticipation as Blade guided Ethan through the fundamentals. The initial minutes were challenging. The engine stalled. The bike tipped. But the moment he successfully completed a run down the strip without incident, a resounding cheer erupted across the tarmac. The significance wasn't the ride itself, but the affirmation that he could indeed begin anew. Life soon settled into a peculiar cadence. Ethan maintained his night job at the bus depot, yet began attending informal gatherings with the group. Sometimes these were simple occasions for coffee and card games. Other times, they involved assisting in the restoration of motorcycles for children in foster care, a less publicized tradition of the Angels. Lily and Leo developed a close bond, forging an unlikely friendship rooted in shared adversity and playful mischief. However, one evening, Ethan's phone rang, displaying Blade's contact information. Ethan answered. There was no preamble. "Blade's been in an accident." Ethan froze. "What happened?" "A truck disregarded a red light. He was escorting a toy run for the children." Ethan's heart sank. He grabbed his jacket and left without a word. Upon arriving at the hospital, the scene resembled something from a film. Numerous motorcycles were parked, their engines silent, helmets resting stoically on their seats. Inside, the waiting room was filled with individuals clad in leather, their heads bowed in quiet concern. Leo sat in a corner, clutching a plush toy Ethan had given him. Lily stood steadfastly by his side. Ethan approached and knelt beside the boy. "Will he be all right?" Leo inquired. Ethan couldn't offer a definitive answer, but he mirrored Blade's earlier gesture. He placed a steadying hand on the boy's shoulder. "You are not alone, Leo. We are here with you." 2 days elapsed without any update. Blade remained in surgery, sustained by machines. Rumors circulated wildly. Some predicted the worst, while others insisted he had awakened asking for Leo. Yet for Ethan, none of this mattered. His commitment was unwavering. The hospital staff observed him with quiet curiosity. Most visitors came and went, but Ethan persisted. He diligently mopped the floors, provided coffee for the nurses, and even repaired a malfunctioning light fixture in the ICU corridor. "I can't simply sit idle," he'd explain. Yet the truth was, the agonizing weight was unbearable. One evening, a younger biker named Rune approached him in the cafeteria. "Man, you don't have to do all this." Ethan responded with a shrug. "It feels better than doing nothing." Rune sat down beside him. "We've had prospects bail, guys who wore the patch for a week and then disappeared. But you're not even officially a member, and you're here every single day." Ethan looked up. "I'm not trying to prove anything." Rune offered a smile. "That's precisely why you've already proven yourself." Later that night, Ethan ventured to check on Blade's room once more. The steady beeping of the machines filled the silence. Leo had fallen asleep in a chair, enveloped in his father's oversized jacket. Ethan gently pulled a blanket over the boy and dimmed the lights. The news coverage failed to capture the true essence of this moment. The profound loyalty, the quiet gestures of support, the understated nature of true brotherhood. It resided in the patient waiting. The day Blade regained consciousness, the entire hospital floor seemed to resonate with the news. Not with alarms, but with the eventual breaking of the pervasive silence. Ethan had just stepped out for coffee when a nurse rushed past. He abandoned everything and hurried back inside. Within the room, Leo clung to his father's arm, tears streaming. Blade's voice, though weak and raspy, was clear. "Is the boy all right?" Ethan blinked in surprise. "You're asking about me?" "No," Blade croaked. "Leo, you—" He then added more slowly, "Did you keep your vest clean?" It was a jest, albeit one understood only by those familiar with their unspoken code. A collective sigh of relief swept through the room, even from the hardened bikers. Rune discreetly wiped his eyes. That evening, once Blade's condition stabilized, the Brotherhood convened in the hospital parking lot. The engines remained silent, illuminated only by a single flashlight in the center of their circle. Ethan was called forward. One by one, each brother approached, placing a hand on his shoulder. No grand ceremony, no elaborate speeches, only Blade's voice, faintly audible from his hospital window. He has earned the patch. Then an elder biker, the one with the distinctive white beard, stepped forward and hand-stitched the complete insignia onto Ethan's vest. Transitioning from prospect to brother, wearing the full patch signified a profound change. Ethan no longer rode merely as a guest. He was an integral part of every ride, every decision, and every meeting, some of which involved difficult realities. On a particularly cold evening, Blade requested a private word with Ethan. "There's something significant I need to ask you." Ethan listened attentively. "There's a young man in juvenile detention," Blade explained. "He's 17 and in serious trouble. No family. He reached out to us, seeking our help to get out. However, this kid isn't safe where he is." Ethan frowned, seeking clarification. "What exactly are you asking of me?" "Simply to visit him," Blade requested. "You have a way with words. You've experienced hardship. He might be more inclined to listen to you." The following morning, Ethan found himself seated opposite a thick pane of glass at the county jail, his gaze fixed on a young man with visibly bruised knuckles and a chipped tooth. Their conversation began slowly. Ethan offered no sermons, only shared his own experiences of fire, fear, and the possibility of second chances. As the young man's tears began to flow, Ethan realized his role transcended being a biker. It was about embodying the very support system he had desperately needed in his own past. The vest hadn't transformed him, but rather served as a powerful reminder of his inherent self. Ethan hadn't thought of his own father in years, but after that visit to the jail, memories resurfaced like specters from the past. His father wasn't inherently malicious, merely broken. Alcohol abuse, job losses, outbursts of anger directed at inanimate objects. There were no apologies offered, only a pervasive silence and a mountain of unpaid bills that seemed to dwarf everything else. One evening after finishing his shift at the bus depot, Ethan found himself walking down the very street he had fled as a child. He passed the corner store where his father used to exchange bottles for gas money. The building stood boarded up, forgotten, much like much of this forgotten part of town. He sat down on the curb, lit a cigarette he wouldn't finish, and gazed up at the night sky. Blade found him there. "Do you ever reflect on the person you used to be?" Ethan asked, his gaze still fixed upwards. "Constantly," Blade replied, "but not because I miss him." Ethan nodded in understanding. "Just trying not to become him." Blade settled beside him, his knees protesting with a crack. "We all carry a fire within us, brother. Some are consumed by it, while others learn to channel its warmth to illuminate the path for others." For a brief period, a profound silence settled between them. Then Ethan whispered, "Do you believe I can transcend my past?" Blade offered a gentle smile. "You already have." The subsequent storm arrived with fierce intensity, mirroring the first. Thunder reverberated through the night sky and rain swept relentlessly across the streets, indifferent to who possessed shelter and who did not. Ethan was driving Lily home from school when they witnessed the scene. A woman huddled beneath the erratic glow of a street lamp clutched two garbage bags, accompanied by a child drenched to the bone, without a jacket. Ethan slowed the truck. Lily remained silent, her gaze fixed on her father. They pulled over. "Do you need a ride?" Ethan inquired, lowering the window. The woman hesitated momentarily before nodding her assent. They welcomed her and her son inside. She introduced herself as Clara and her son as Sam. They had just departed from a shelter that had reached its capacity. Back at their modest apartment, Ethan provided Clara with a towel, while Lily warmed some soup. The small living space felt imbued with a newfound warmth that evening, not from the heating system, but from the shared act of kindness. Before Clara departed the following day, she drew Ethan aside for a quiet word. "People rarely stop to help anymore," she observed. "Not like you did." He responded with a gentle smile. "I once considered kindness a luxury. Now I recognize it as a conscious choice." Later that week, Leo posed a question regarding their willingness to assist strangers. "Because someone once helped me," Ethan explained, "and I made a promise never to forget that act." The piercing wail of sirens shattered the pre-dawn silence. Ethan and Lily awoke to the acrid smell of smoke, but this time the danger was not at their doorstep. 2 blocks away, a laundromat was engulfed in flames. Ethan reacted without hesitation. He grabbed his boots, then paused. Lily stood in the hallway holding his old flannel shirt. "I know," she said softly. "Just please come back again, okay?" He kissed her forehead. "Always." By the time he reached the scene, firefighters were establishing a perimeter, but panicked shouts indicated someone was still trapped inside. Ethan bypassed thought, moving instinctively through the smoke and heat, past voices urging him to stop. Inside, he discovered an elderly gentleman pinned behind a folding station. Unable to move him alone, Ethan lifted the man, coughing through the thickening smoke, and kicked open the rear door just as the ceiling began to collapse. This time, media presence was already established. However, Ethan did not linger for interviews. He simply sat on the curb, coated in ash, whispering to himself, still breathing. The elderly man gripped his hand tightly, refusing to let go. Some fires one walks into, others one is destined to carry. The subsequent club meeting felt distinctly different. The table was full, yet one chair remained conspicuously empty. It belonged to Blade. His recovery from the accident was ongoing, and doctors had advised further surgery. Nevertheless, every member of the group respected the designated seat, leaving it untouched. As Ethan entered, clad in his full patch, all eyes turned towards him. Rune rose to his feet. "Brother, that chair is now yours." Blade had left instructions. Ethan gently shook his head. "That remains his seat." However, an elder member, known as Wolf, a man of few words but considerable influence, stepped forward. "Leadership isn't about being the loudest," he stated. "It's about consistent presence, and you have demonstrated that." Reluctantly, Ethan took the vacant seat. The ensuing silence was not awkward, but filled with profound respect, solid and unspoken. Rune then presented him with a well-worn notebook. "These are Blade's notes, club records, details of charity rides, and foster care lists. Everything is documented here. He trusts you implicitly with this responsibility." Ethan opened the book. His name was inscribed at the top, not as a provisional member, but as a true brother. And for the first time, Ethan didn't feel like an occupant merely filling a space. He felt as though he was actively shaping it. Lily, while cleaning her closet, discovered something significant. It was Ethan's old prospect vest. She held it up, the fabric dusty and creased, like a memory still vividly alive. She presented it to him. "Dad, what do you want to do with this?" He regarded it for a prolonged moment. "Let's keep it," he decided. "It serves as a reminder of who I once was and the person I've chosen to become." That evening, they carefully framed the vest and hung it in the hallway, positioned just below a photograph capturing Ethan, Leo, and Blade after Blade's recovery from surgery. In the image, all three sported their full patches, their smiles reflecting a shared journey through adversity, a testament to their resilience. Visitors frequently paused before the framed vest. "Why preserve something so weathered?" one inquired. Lily answered before Ethan could, "Because it's the vest he bled in, the one that marked his beginning." Spring arrived late that year, adorning South Glen with delicate hues, nascent leaves, and sidewalks cracked yet cleansed by the recent rains. Ethan had attained a status akin to local legend, yet he remained remarkably grounded. He continued to assist neighbors with heating repairs, habitually provided Lily with a thermos of chai for school, and steadfastly declined any monetary compensation offered. One Saturday morning, Blade extended an invitation for a ride with the Angels, specifying a destination beyond their usual haunts. Not to a bar, but to a shelter situated outside town. "The children there could use some lively activity," Blade remarked. The shelter, discreetly located behind a church, had been overlooked by many, but not by the Angels. As the motorcycles roared into the lot, children rushed to the windows, their eyes wide with wonder. The bikers proceeded to set up tables laden with toys, books, and food. Leo enthusiastically distributed candy, while Rune offered rides in slow circles. Bear demonstrated to a young boy the process of changing a tire, using simple tools and patient guidance. Ethan found himself seated with a teenager who remained silent, his gaze fixated on the patch adorning Ethan's chest. "You don't resemble the individuals featured on television," the boy murmured. "Good," Ethan replied with a smile. "That's precisely the intention." He removed his jacket and draped it gently around the boy's shoulders. Sometimes the journey back begins with simply feeling warm again. The boy offered no verbal response, but he did not remove the jacket. One evening, as Ethan was securing the garage after an extended workday, he discovered Blade leaning against the doorframe. "Have you ever contemplated something more permanent?" Blade inquired. Ethan raised an eyebrow in curiosity. "Such as?" "A more substantial role in leadership, a position at the forefront." Ethan's expression shifted. "You wish for me to lead the chapter?" Blade nodded affirmatively. "Not immediately, but soon. You possess the essential qualities, steady hands and a compassionate heart." Ethan leaned back, his gaze drifting towards the oil-stained ceiling. "I was merely a single father scrubbing floors just a year ago." "Precisely," Blade affirmed. "You've earned your standing without solicitation. People respect your counsel because you understand their struggles. You risk everything for a child you didn't know. You stood vigil by my side when even I doubted my own survival." Ethan remained contemplative. "You've already been demonstrating leadership," Blade added. "This would merely formalize it." Later that night, Ethan sat by Lily's bedside as she slept, his fingers gently stroking her forehead. He whispered, "I'm uncertain if I am prepared." Yet deep within, he knew he had been ready from the very moment he plunged into that fiery ordeal. It was a warm Sunday afternoon. Lily and Leo were seated on the porch, their laughter mingling as they tinkered with a broken toy motorcycle, attempting repairs with duct tape. Ethan observed them from the stairs, engrossed in a worn book. Suddenly, Lily looked up and asked, "Dad, are you happy?" The question caught him off guard. He set his book down. "Why do you ask that?" She shrugged. "You do so much for everyone, for them, but I never hear you say you're happy." Ethan paused, contemplating. The preceding months had been a whirlwind of self-discovery, loyalty, and critical decisions. He recalled nights spent sleeping in his truck, questioning if he would ever be sufficient for Lily, the intense fire, the rescued boy, the unwavering brotherhood. It all coalesced into a continuous stream of moments that both inflicted pain and fostered healing. "I believe," he stated slowly, "that happiness isn't found in grand spectacles. It's a quiet contentment, like witnessing your laughter on this porch, a place I never envisioned us having." Lily offered a warm smile. "So yes," Ethan nodded. "Yes, I am happy," he then added, "and you are the reason I haven't completely burned out." The chapter organized its inaugural public ride that spring. It was a family-oriented event featuring food, music, and shared stories. Even the mayor made an appearance, though he seemed to studiously avoid direct eye contact with most of the angels. However, Ethan took the stage to deliver a speech. Standing atop a flatbed truck, his vest fitting snugly, he addressed the assembled crowd, bikers, children, locals, and strangers alike. He cleared his throat. "I once believed family was solely determined by birth. However, I've come to understand it's also a construct of shared experiences. And sometimes fire serves not to destroy, but to forge." He held up a small patch depicting a flame entwined with an angel's wing. "For anyone who has navigated the flames and emerged with a renewed commitment to kindness, this is for you." He knelt, affixing the patch first to Leo's small vest, then to Lily's denim jacket. Applause erupted. Some individuals were visibly moved to tears. That night, after the crowd dispersed and the lot emptied, Ethan sat alone on his motorcycle, gazing at the stars, not in pursuit of anything, but in a gesture of gratitude. Years elapsed. Lily graduated, with Leo offering louder cheers than anyone else. Ethan eventually assumed leadership of the chapter, not through overt dominance, but through consistent, quiet dedication. He meticulously maintained the chapter's integrity, overseeing outreach initiatives, championing second chances, and actively engaging with shelters and correctional facilities. While he never amassed great wealth, his name commanded respect, not only within the biker community, but also among those who had no connection to motorcycling. One evening, he embarked on a solitary ride to the very ridge where the fire had originally occurred. The former site was now transformed, replaced by tall grass and an enveloping silence. He dismounted, stood contemplating for a while, and then whispered, "Thank you." The words were directed not to any specific entity, but perhaps to the younger version of himself. the scared, broken, and isolated individual who, against all odds, chose to confront the inferno. Lily's voice echoed in his memory. Are you happy? With the low hum of his motorcycle as a backdrop and the wind caressing his patch-laden jacket, he offered himself a gentle smile. Yes, he was, and he was no longer riding alone. If this story stirred your emotions, swelled your heart, or brought a tear to your eye, you know what to do. Please share your thoughts in the comments below. What would be your response if confronted by fire? Subscribe for more authentic life transformations, tales of second chances, and narratives that resonate long after their conclusion.